So today's video is sponsored by the company Minimal Case. Now, I've always been curious to why people go out and buy the latest, greatest, sleek looking design phones only to cover them up with those huge, bulky cases. So that's where the company Minimal Case comes in. Now, they offer cases for the newest phones while keeping the phone looking the way it was intended to look. Now, my personal favorite is the transparent case, which basically looks like you don't have a case at all, and that's the one that I have on my Pixel 4 XL. But they also offer colors in frosted white, frosted black, and matte black. So there's no flashy colors. They try to keep it simple, which is the overall idea behind their cases. Now, if you go to their site and use the code Gamesky, you can save 25% off. I'm also going to put a link in the description that if you use that, it will automatically apply the discount when you go to check out. But I'd like to thank Minimal Case for sponsoring today's video. Alright guys, with this week having the release of the new Apple Airpods Pro and the new Amazon Echo Buds, I figured it'd be a good time to do a comparison between the two. Because the holiday season's coming up and a lot of people are going to try to decide between the two, so I figured a video being able to point out what both of them have to offer and some of the differences might actually be beneficial. But let's go ahead and start with the price. The price of the AirPods Pro come in at $250, where the price of the Amazon Echo Buds come in at $130. To kind of put that in perspective, you can buy almost 2 pair of the Echo Buds to equal the price of 1 pair of the AirPods Pro. Now, I just point that out because a lot of people, when buying gifts or buying products in general, price is one of the main selling factors here. But let's go ahead and check out some of the specs and what both earbuds have to offer. I will start off with this. I think both of these work very well within their ecosystem. I think the AirPods, if you're somebody that's already really heavily into Apple's ecosystem, if you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad or a MacBook and stuff like that, it works very well within each other. Because when you sign into one device using your Apple ID, it's much easier to connect to all of your other devices without having to walk through a setup each time. Same goes really for the Echo Buds. I think if you're really into Amazon's ecosystem, like if you have different Echo devices within your house, it's really nice to be able to integrate that just by saying Alexa and tell it what to do, or ask it questions, or tell it to turn lights off, or order something from Amazon. I really like the functionality of both of these. Now, the one advantage here I will give to Apple, because they have the H1 chip, which what that's doing is just making it very quick and simple to connect to your devices. But the other thing I want to point out here is to get the most and really be able to use the Echo Buds, you're going to have to download the Alexa app. But now let's get into some of the specs here. Both of these use Bluetooth 5.0, so I didn't have any kind of connection issues, no dropouts, and when watching video, there was no kind of lag. So I didn't experience either of that with any of these, so that is nice to know right off the bat. But now I do want to point out, when it comes to the Ipx rating, both of these are IPX4, which means they're water resistant for light splashes, even light rain and stuff like that. But both of these you definitely do not want to submerge into water. Now, I also understand they may be doing that on purpose, because if it's a higher IPX rating, they're going to have to use more coating, which ultimately could affect the microphones. So now let's talk about some of the new features. The AirPods Pro now have active noise canceling, which these do a very good job of blocking out your surroundings, where the Echo Buds have active noise reduction. And they actually work with Bose on this to be able to get this kind of technology. And even though it's not rated as active noise canceling, these are extremely close. I would kind of put it that Apple's blocking out this much amount of noise and the Echo Buds are maybe right here. It's not neck and neck, but it's not a far gap either. Now, both of these also have transparency mode, and what that is that's allowing the microphones to pull in your outside surrounding sounds, which means you can carry on conversations, or if you need to hear your environment so you can hear cars so you don't get ran over, you can do that because the microphones will pull in that sound. So now let's talk about some of the things you get inside the box. The new AirPods Pro finally has silicone ear tips, but they're proprietary ear tips, which basically means these are made specifically for AirPods, and it's really hard to go out and buy different aftermarket ear tips just because Apple has their own specific thing. Where the Echo Buds come with the small, medium, and large silicone ear tips, but also include wing ear tips as well. So if you're somebody that does like to go to the gym and work out and you don't want to worry about these falling out, the wing tips definitely help. But also with the Echo Buds, you do have the ability to go and purchase foam ear tips as well. The charging cable on both of these to me is very confusing. The AirPods are using a Lightning to USB-C, which is great, but you have to have a charging block that has a USB-C connection, as to where they're not including that in the box. And the Echo Buds, for some reason, are still using micro USB. Considering that we're in the time that we're in, those cables shouldn't exist anymore. Now, speaking of the charging case, the battery life on both of these are pretty neck and neck. With the AirPods, you're gonna get around 4.5 hours of use on the earbuds and around 24 hours with the case, where the Echo Buds, you're gonna get 5 hours using the earbuds and around 20 hours using the case. So that's not anything substantial to separate one from the other, and they both have fast charging in the case, so there's not much to separate them there, although the AirPods case is wireless charging capable, so that is a huge bonus when it comes to that. Now let's talk about the earbuds themselves. They both have two completely different designs, where the AirPods have the stem and the Echo Buds is your typical earbud. Now when it comes to controls, the Echo Buds have touch controls, and this year for some reason the AirPods are deciding to use a squeeze feature on the stem to be able to use your controls. Now both of these work extremely well, I have no complaints, but I do have a problem that neither one of these have volume control. I think that's one of the best features in earbuds because it keeps you from having to pull out your phone, keeps you from having to talk to your smart assistant to turn the volume up, and I always think it's just much more convenient to have everything built into the earbuds themselves. Now, one thing I do really like in both of these is they both have sensors to where if you take your earbuds out, it will automatically pause your music and then it will resume as soon as you put them back in your ear. This is a feature that should be in a lot more earbuds. Now, when it comes down to the microphones, both microphones are very, very good. They both use the beam forming technology, so that's aiming directly more towards your voice, and so that's blocking out a lot of your surroundings. But you guys can be a judge by listening to a test here. So here is a test of the microphone on the Amazon Echo Buds. I think it does an extremely good job of picking up my vocals and a really nice job of blocking out outside noises. And so speaking of outside noises, this is the microphone with a background crowd noise being played. That way you can get an idea of what it would sound like if you took a call in public. All right, guys, so here is the mic quality from the AirPods Pro. This has always been labeled as one of the best microphones when taking calls, and with the Pro Edition, it's not really any different. And so here is the microphone with a crowd noise being played in the background, so you get an idea of what it would sound like if you took phone calls in public. So now let's talk about the most subjective thing here, and that's the sound. But in my opinion, I think the technology here is definitely affecting the overall sound because Apple is using a single custom driver where the Echo Buds are using dual balanced armature drivers. So the effect that that has, what I've noticed, is the AirPods are very warm and bass heavy, where the Echo Buds have a lot more attention to detail and sound a little bit more open. And so that's two completely different sound signatures that's going to appeal to two completely different people. Now, when it comes down to bass, bass is definitely punchy in both earbuds. I just feel like the AirPods let the bass be a little bit more loose, and at times that rolls into the other frequencies, which means that you're not getting as much clarity that you get with the Echo Buds. I feel like picking up details and hearing subtle sounds and being able to tell where things are coming from was much easier with the Echo Buds than it was the AirPods. But if you're somebody that just likes to listen to mainstream music, a lot of stuff that has bass, and you like the sound signature of feeling like two bigger speakers are in front of you, having that club feel but more closed in, the AirPods fit that style, where the Echo Buds feel like you're in a little bit larger room where the bass is definitely more controlled, your mids sound more like the singer is in front of you, and then again, having that separation of instruments, in my opinion, were much better with the Echo Buds. Now, when it comes to volume, I honestly feel like both of these still could use another notch or two when it comes to volume, but I definitely feel like the AirPods were louder in comparison between the two. So for me, this is a simple choice, but for others, it may not be. If you're already somebody that's tied into Apple's ecosystem and you just like things to just be easy to use, and you just like to listen to music but don't really care about hearing every little detail or picking things apart, the AirPod Pros are not a bad option. But if you're somebody that uses a bunch of different devices, or if you're somebody to where audio is a little bit more important, I think the Echo Buds are a much better choice. So if it were up to me and I had one that I had to choose, this would be an easy one. I would go with the Echo Buds all day long. My conclusion of this is I think both of these are very good products. I think the AirPods are just priced very high, but that's also because I try so many audio products and I see where you can get some really good options at around $100 or less. But guys, that's my comparison between the new Apple AirPods Pro and the new Amazon Echo Buds. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.